Krystle Appiah asks, can a marriage thrive when two people haven't addressed their personal trauma already? I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about a book that I read, perhaps one that is more around than the weird aspect of it, although a lack of control of a marriage is in crisis, and terrible immigration stories are, you might find that a bit weird. And indeed, that is what today's story is about. I am talking about Rootless, by Krystle Zara Appiah, which was written in 2023. For those who don't know, Krystle Zara Appiah is a fairly recent author who only has one book published to her name, and it is this book. I believe she's also served as an editor, and she's been named on at least one list of emerging authors to watch out for. She's also Ghanaian British. She's from Ghana, which is pretty interesting. And that's pretty much all I know about her. I can only find that little bit of information. She doesn't seem to have too much else out there about her. But I do hope to find more about her in the future. This is a debut novel, and it is very interesting for all of the problems that it has that kind of weigh the book down. There's a lot of potential here that I feel once she hones her craft, it's going to be, she's going to be knocking it out of the park. I hope to encounter more of that in the future. Also, this is a Bevan book. They sent it to me when they moved to India. And so this is just one of the books that I'm getting through, it's certainly an interesting one. Bevan told me they haven't read this yet, even though they had it on their bookshelf, which I find to be a personal problem. I don't put books on my shelf until I read them. But that's just me. Because this book was published in 2023, I will not spoil it in the summary section, but I will be doing that in the analysis section. So if you intend to read this and don't want to be spoiled about it, definitely go out and seek it first and then come back to this video so we can have a discussion. And without further ado, I am going to talk about Rootless. I'll do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So Rootless focuses on Sam and Appiah. They are both Ghanaian individuals living in the United Kingdom. Sam is biracial or bi-ethnic. I don't quite know. The book doesn't really clarify there. But Appiah was born in Ghana and has immigrated, and they eventually get married. At the beginning of the story, it begins in media res, such a fun phrase to say, where Sam rushes home and discovers that Appiah has left the home and flown back home to Ghana. And he's wondering why she's abandoned him as well as their daughter. And he tries to think of reasons, but he can't figure it out. And he's calling everyone, especially people in Ghana, but they do not have any answers for him. And then the story then flashes back 20 years to the past as Appiah is moving to London with some relatives. She's not very happy about moving there. She has a troubling history, which I'll talk about in a few moments. But she's living with relatives and she's unsure what's really going to happen as she doesn't really know anyone. However, she soon meets Sam, who is, part Ghanan. They become close friends, although they drift apart from time to time. They always come back together and chat. As time goes on, Appiah begins to not feel very strongly about school. She doesn't want to go to college, but she's pressured into it by her parents. And when she gets to the university, she's stressed. She's not eating, not really sleeping. Things are bad for her. And she ultimately fails out of the university, which upsets her parents, partially because they want her to go to college, but also because there's damage to their reputation back home. And Appiah, she she just decides to go to work for a bookstore and becomes the assistant manager there. And then she reunites with Sam at this point. They grow closer, develop a bit of a relationship, although they have boyfriend and girlfriends opposite each other. It seems they're cheating, and neither of them seems to mind about that. And they do seem to bond over their mutual trauma. Sam's mother abandoned the family, which it seems to be a familiar theme for him, coming in the future even, and so he has a chance to meet her again, but she doesn't seem to want to meet Sam, which makes him sad, and he kind of turns to Ife for help there. Whereas Ife, she has a lot of trauma from when she first moved to England years past, even before this first time, where her parents lived in a rural area, and Ife got bullied and even got some scars from that bullying, which she hasn't quite gotten over. And so they kind of bond over that. Eventually they enter into an actual relationship, even though Ife doesn't really want that. They're pressured into getting married by their families. Again, Ife isn't sure that's what she wants. And then there's a pressure to have children from her family, but also from Sam, who really wants a child. Ife doesn't feel that she wants to have children or anything, but she ends up getting pregnant, and she decides to keep it. But this proves to be very stressful for her, even though Sam promises to be there for her and whatnot. He works overtime and leaves her with the child. She's not sleeping very well. And she finds herself burdened by the fact that she doesn't really know how to be a mother, and her parents are living in Ghana, and so she just is very stressed and it seems to be crumbling, and no one's noticing. And then there's an incident where she accidentally leaves her child Olivia on the train, and she tells the train staff as well as has Sam called, and when he shows up, Ife's not there. It turns out she went to go shopping, because she sort of had a break. And Sam realizes this is problematic, and he agrees to help Ife and make sure that this doesn't happen again. And as time passes, things seem to improve. Like, he becomes a better partner in the relationship. At that point, Ife becomes pregnant again, and she realizes she does not want to keep the child. She's worried that even though Sam is there for her now, he might fall back into old patterns, and she might die, or she's going to lose her career and lose herself in the process. And despite the fact that she's telling Sam this, he doesn't really seem to listen to her. And she has no choice. She decides to fly to Ghana in order to get some time away. And from there, the rest of the story takes place. I will not spoil what happens, but quite a bit does happen there. But I will let you find that out on your own. In terms of analysis, there is quite a bit worth talking about with Rootless here. Some of it is pretty good, but there's also a lot of bad that kind of sinks the story a little bit. But the main things that Appiah is talking about here are pretty interesting. One of the main themes is that of a marriage in crisis. It seems to be the sort of central idea of the story. Appiah writes a marriage that is coming apart at the seams. It might have never been at the place it should have been, which is why it might be failing. And there's a whole lot of factors at play that prevent it from really thriving. But it did seem to be pretty strong and full of love at the beginning. Like, they got together and they seemed to love each other, even though Ife had hesitations. She wasn't sure she really wanted to be with Sam, but she decided that indeed she made a choice and decided to be with Sam. And so there is a sense of love there, and it was pretty strong, even if there were some doubts in their mind. However, the thing that seemed to cause the most burden is the fact that Sam wanted to have a child. There was initial hesitation with having the child, but eventually Ife went along with it. And then after having the child, there was a lot of stress. Ife seemed to be on her own. She couldn't really turn to anyone. She had her family at first, but then they went back to Ghana. And so it appears that this isn't really an equal partnership. Sam isn't doing his part to raise the child. He might be trying to make ends meet, but he's not helping he's not helping Ifei, and worse than that, he's not seeing what's going on with Ifei and working to prevent that overburdening from really happening. And so allow me to read you an interesting quote from this. When it comes to Liv, yes, we're a team, but you saw how hard it was for me when she was little, for us. Are you really happy putting that all at risk? All we are right now? Her palms come up to her face. She looks exasperated, exhausted suddenly. I get it. I'm the problem. I couldn't bring another kid into this world. I felt like I was losing my mind for a year straight and don't have it in me to do it again. She pauses. The words come out labored, effortful. There were no good options. And there, Ifei is talking about how she had an abortion with Sam. And she goes back to Ghana and then has the abortion there. And Sam shows up and is like, what did you do? And Ifei is like, I got an abortion because you weren't there for me. And I'm the problem. I don't want to have a child. This is the only good option. I know you might not be there for me when I have this child, and I don't want to lose my career. I don't want to lose myself. I don't want to lose all of this. This felt like the only good option. So there's a lot of problems clear in that accusation right there. That Sam's not there, that it's not an equal partnership, that she doesn't have it in her to be a mother, which is the case for a lot of women. A lot of women don't want to be mothers. A lot of fathers don't want to be, or a lot of men don't want to be fathers. But there's problems inherent in this relationship. And it shows why the marriage is in crisis. But there's a lot of questions, I think, that Appiah brings up. Like, were they right to begin with? Was this marriage ever going to work out? And you could argue that because of the hesitations with Ifei, it didn't seem like it was going to work out. Like there were so many doubts, and Ifei had to be convinced of all of it. And so it's only because she was going along with her family and a little bit with Sam that she even wanted to be in the marriage in the first place. And so that kind of puts doubt on whether this marriage was ever going to work. And as Sam notes, after Ifei tells him about the abortion, he's like, did we ever really know each other? Was I ever sure that I wanted to marry her? And that raises the question, maybe these two didn't know each other, and maybe that's why the marriage wasn't really destined to work out. And then there's another hypothetical you could ask. Unfortunately, at the end of the story, Ifei dies because of a car accident. And so you could ask the hypothetical, they do try to get back together, but would that work? With everything we know now, there's a lot of resolution of traumas throughout the end of the story. And you could argue that because they've addressed their traumas and finally focused on the problems at hand rather than just letting them go ignored, that it might work. But they're still the same people. So I have my doubts, and I think Appiah has a few doubts as well, even if the ending of the story really changes what she's trying to say there. But I do like how that's all there, that you can put doubts on a marriage, and that sometimes people just get married because it feels right or there's pressure, and that creates, or that leads to all these sort of crises in the marriage, all these sort of conflicts that highlight how maybe things aren't really working out. Another big theme of this story is the lack of personal control. Many of Ifei's problems stem from a lack of autonomy. And we see that throughout her life. She's bullied at a young age, left with scars. Her body is sort of taken away from her, or other people exact violence on her body. So she loses control of that and feels that pain for most of her life. She's forced to live in London years later, even though she didn't want to, because her parents thought it would provide her with good opportunities. And while that might be true, it certainly doesn't change the fact that Ifei didn't really want this. And she even tells her mother later on when they're having a fight about things. She's also pushed to get married, really. It's ultimately left up to her, but her family keeps dropping hints, and there's a sort of cultural expectation there. And then there's a pressure to have a kid, which Ifei definitely doesn't want. But again, Sam wants that child, and he leaves her with no choice. He just constantly says, I'll be there for you, even though eventually we find out that he isn't. And so Ifei goes through a life of no control over her own self, it really feels like. And so what happens when someone has that happen to them? There's a lack of control, of course, that leads to fear and other psychological effects. The fear stemming from, I'm not going to be able to control things, I'm going to lose everything, and you react because of that fear. And then there's also the psychological effects of depression, of anxiety, of not feeling like you have control, so you're just filled with sadness. There's postpartum depression here. A lot of it is because Ife doesn't feel like she's a good mother, and there's no one there to support her, but there's also, a lot of other anxieties going on for her, and maybe some breaks with reality that might be going on because of that stress. Too much stress is not good for the mind. There's a really good quote that gets at this sort of underlying emotion that she's feeling. Allow me to read it to you. Feeling the tightness in her chest, Ife knows she doesn't want another child undoing the progress they've made, another baby shackling her to home. She spends all evening trying not to think about it, though as evening wears on, the fear rolls in like a low fog, bleeding out across the floorboards, spreading quietly until it's impossible to see past it. She busies herself, hopes that at any moment she'll feel her period arrive, and know there's no need at all. And that's a very fascinating sort of passage there. Just getting at the anxiety that she's feeling. She hasn't had her period, and she knows what's coming. She knows that she might be pregnant again. And there's a tightness in her chest. There's just this worry that everything she's been working towards is just going to go away again. That she's going to, and there's that fear too as well that she might die because, the first time it wasn't so great. The second time it's probably not going to be that much better. And the family means well. Sam means well, but they don't see Ife. They don't look at her. They don't understand what she's going through. And so they ultimately make choices that just further this feeling for her, and she feels like she doesn't have anyone to really turn to. And so her running away is an effort for her to regain that control. And if she goes back to Ghana and has an abortion, then that's her gaining a sense of self again. That's her making a choice of not having to go through those emotions. And the result is that she's kind of demonized by Sam, by her family. Her mother doesn't like that she got an abortion. It feels wrong to her. But so what you get is a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because Ife's screwed no matter what she does. If she gets an abortion, it severely impacts her marriage. And if she doesn't, then it's just gonna drag her down. It's gonna bring her back to a place that she doesn't want to go. And so what choice does she have to make? This is kind of the only real decision that she can choose, and she chooses herself, which is important. I should also note that there's a sense of feminism here, and also a sense of cultural awareness, understanding how the Ghanaian culture, forces women into this position because it's patriarchal, at least as far as I know based on my research. The same way the United Kingdom is, same way the United States is. There's a sense that women are oppressed and are forced to make decisions that they don't want to, and they lose control. Sam kind of forces Ife to have a child. So there's a feminist element here of possibly providing an explanation for why all of this is taking place, of ultimately this lack of control in this marriage in crisis being a symptom of a patriarchal society, or even a symptom of the overarching culture and problem areas that need to be addressed for that culture to improve. So I do like how Appiah is drawing awareness that it's definitely there, and definitely a part of the story. Despite these interesting themes that Appiah is touching upon, I feel like the ending of this story completely undercuts the entire book. Allow me to tell you what happens at the end of the story. Of course, Ife goes to Ghana, gets an abortion. Sam follows her, realizes what she did, and there's kind of a separation there that takes place over the course of several months. Eventually, they realize their own traumas and they address them. Sam reunites with his mother. Ife kind of confronts her mother about being forced to go to the United Kingdom. A lot of other things going on there too. And they decide that they want each other. So they reunite and agree to split their time between Ghana and the United Kingdom in order to have that support system that they were lacking. And then Ife has a photo gallery or art gallery thing because she's an artist in the city, and she goes there, but she gets into a car crash and dies. And then the family mourns them. Sam puts up a bunch of photos that wows everybody, and then. Like the family sort of recalls what's going to happen going forward, or they think about what's going to happen going forward, and how Sam is now in Ghana and has that support system for his daughter as well. So maybe the same thing won't happen to Olivia that happened to Ife. So like that's an interesting ending, but it sucks. It's bad. I don't like it at all. It completely undercuts the book for a number of reasons. Like it takes the focus off this marriage in crisis and puts it on this accident that now takes place. And so now it's viewed as sort of a tragic romance. They would have been together if not for this car accident. Their marriage would have been beautiful. But that's ignoring all the problems that already existed, and it sort of turns Ife into a mausoleum. And that, like, at the end, you see, like, these photos that Sam put up. But, again, the problem in the story was that nobody was truly seeing Ife. And so by doing this, again, nobody's seeing Ife. They're not understanding her emotions or what she was dealing with. They're only seeing, like, glimpses into the past. And they're like, oh, she must have been happy at that time, even though she definitely wasn't. Sam kind of sees that when he goes to the art gallery, but I feel like the ending negates all of that. Like, there's no honest understanding of Ife anymore. She becomes a mausoleum. Like the focus is again on the tragic event that happened to her, rather than this like marriage in crisis and the lack of control that she really had. And ultimately it puts the focus on Sam at the end of the story, which is a big problem for a number of reasons, not the least of which is because Sam's not a really great character. He's not written that well. All the attention is focused on Ife, but the ending kind of frames it on Sam. And again, that might be because, like, you know, Appiah's touching upon how, like, the culture so often focuses on men and doesn't really consider the feelings of women. But I don't think that's what she's intending here. I think she's definitely focusing on the tragic aspect and how Sam must carry on and do the best for his daughter. But again, the focus on Sam completely upends the entire purpose of the story, and it kind of ruins it in a lot of ways. I feel like it's bad writing that really hinders the overall story and truly sinks it, which is definitely probably not what Appiah intended here, and you end up with a story that kind of derails itself. But I should also mention that Appiah touches upon the perils of immigration here. You see that with the attacks that Ife receives when she's younger, the difficulty in immigrating even in middle school or high school, and the stress of not being able to rely on your family when you're in the United Kingdom and your family's in Ghana. And I think that's specifically mentioned in this story because when Ife has her collapse in the story, her parents come and they're like, we should bring them back to Ghana. Like, it takes a village to raise a child. There's a support system there. Do you even know your neighbors? And you're kind of highlighting the issues with the immigration process, but also the differences between the United Kingdom and Ghana and how one might be culturally better and have a better support system there, which you typically don't get because individualistic cultures like the United Kingdom and the United States wall off our people, which is unfortunate. And in this way, it does remind me a little bit of Beautiful Country. Beautiful Country is definitely a better written story, but both stories' underlying message is kind of, is immigrating to this other place that has a lot of resources really better? Oftentimes it is not. It's often better to remain in a place there where you have opportunity and you have resources. It's interesting that I've read at least 2 stories that have had that overarching message, and maybe even more that I can't really recall. However, despite all of that, again, as I mentioned with the ending, like, the story is undercut, and it suffers from a lot of problems. Bad pacing, especially early on, where it feels like the story is just taking forever and making any sort of point or getting in any sort of direction. The chapters feel rushed. Like, each chapter is sort of a period in Ife's life. And it feels kind of rushed. Like, here's like 10 pages that talk about what happened at this point in her life. And it's not nearly enough time to really get a feel for what's going on or how this might be hurting their marriage or anything like that, or how it contributes to the overall suffering that Ife is going to. It needs more time to breathe, which Appiah isn't really doing here because she's focused on such a large time scale. And maybe like shortening up that time scale could have helped a little bit. Also, Sam is a half-baked character, not really a lot to him, and the story is like Sam is really what the story needs him to be. If he needs to be like a ignoring husband, not that attentive father, he's that. If it needs him to be a loving partner, it's that. If it needs him to be like a cool outsider who can possibly help, if Ife like get adjusted to this immigration experience, it can be that as well. But Sam doesn't really have an exact static character, and so that's why the ending is kind of sucks, because you refocus the story on Sam, who we don't really learn a lot about besides his mother. And it feels kind of like a little bit of one-dimensional character there, and I feel like better writing could have improved that, but I don't think it could have improved the weird decision to focus on Sam at the end of the story rather than Ife, who was the focus the entire time. And then, like, the desire to count down from, like, 20 years, 19 years, 18 years before the said event, it feels a bit gimmicky, and it messes with the structure of the story, because the beginning is, like, in media res, and then you get this countdown, and so you already know something bad is going to happen, and I felt like I wanted to tune out. And so I feel like a better way would have been like you tell us about the lives of these two people, and then you have the event happen and what the chaos and whatnot that unfurl afterwards. But rather doing it the other way feels a bit gimmicky and doesn't really serve to benefit the story. It just makes everything feel like a slog to get through, especially because the writing and the pacing are not that great here. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Rootless. I do not recommend the book. I did not personally enjoy it. There were a lot of sections where it was interesting, or when Appiah really got into her groove, like the writing was phenomenal, but those were few and far in between. And ultimately the story suffers because, of course, on the ending, which I just can't seem to get over, of how bad it serves the story. And just the pacing of it, it's just very slow and made me want to read literally anything else. And that's unfortunate because I wanted to like it, like her writing was good. But I think the thing coming out of this is that there's a lot of potential with her writing, and I hope that Appiah writes more in the future, because I definitely see potential for her writing even greater things as she improves her craft and becomes a more focused, more solid writer in the future. Because I do think that's possible, and that's certainly happened to other authors before. So yeah, those are really my thoughts there. Obviously I don't recommend it, but maybe check it out from your local library to get a feel for it. I got it for free from Bevan, so I can't really complain too much about it. But yeah, let me know if you have any thoughts on it. Let me know in the comments below. Would love to hear from you. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this book or this author if they don't already know. Also, join the Discord if you want to have further conversations about books, movies, and other forms of media. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and hopefully not marriage in crisis travels. Farewell.